Celebrities are a big part of our society. They have the ability to influence how we see ourselves, how we view the world, and even how we think about who is normal. But recently, there have been some celebrities who have managed to shock people with their behavior or actions. Celebrity issues are an important topic. Emotional, personal, and sometimes controversial, they have led to some interesting discussions on social media. Luckily for you, in this video, we will discuss why are Chantel Everett and Pedro Jimeno divorcing. After 5 years of marriage, Pedro Jimeno filed for Chantel Everett's divorce in the late spring. Viewers of the Family Chantel and 90-Day Fiance were not astonished. Years of conflict had plagued their marriage, and it was not just because of the in-laws. Recently, there has been suspicion that Pedro is lying. Why are these two getting divorced now, after 5 years? The world only recently learned that these two 90-Day Fiancé legends are entering a new phase. They were the first franchise cast members to have a standalone film. In order for Darcy and Stacy to run, Chantel and Pedro had to walk. They are now no longer. Pedro Jimeno filed for Chantel Everett's divorce on May 27. Their union was irretrievably broken, he said of it. He requested that all marital assets and debts be divided equally between them by the court. Pedro also asked for an urgent hearing on his request. The separation took place on April 27. Chantel took a $257,000 withdrawal on April 23 from their joint business account, according to Pedro's declaration. He claims that the funds are currently held in account jointly owned by Chantel and her sister Winter. Pedro is requesting that the court order Chantel to put the money back into a joint account so that they can divide it in accordance with their divorce agreement. Pedro's request for an emergency hearing was then turned down by the court. When the court is prepared, they will nonetheless convene a regular hearing. Chantel and Pedro's marriage was rife with drama for many years. Families of both parties were a major problem. Chantel's family is extravagant in a lot of ways. Chantel and her family have faced intense hostility from Pedro's family in the meantime. We are not just talking about fights at Chantel's home, though that has a very well-known history. Because his family opposed the marriage in the beginning, the couple had to tell lies to them. The issues, however, have recently become somewhat more localized. Chantel explained how Pedro's new work had corresponded with a sudden loss of affection on the Family Chantel. It wasn't only that Pedro grumbled and defamed her all the time. It is as though he never existed. As the season went on, viewers very naturally started to see other hints. Pedro's abrupt display of adoration. He was absent from Chantel for so long. In the end, a lot of viewers reached the same conclusion. Maybe Pedro was having an affair. For the time being, a restraining order prohibits Chantel and Pedro from undermining one another, including through business dealings. They will have to wait for the verdict of the court. They can then divide their assets after that. When everything is settled, we might learn the real reason behind this divorce. Did Pedro Jimeno cheat on Chantel Everett? Is he a scammer? Fans of 90-Day Fiancé heard this week that Chantel Everett and Pedro Jimeno had divorce papers filed. Fans are curious about their divorce. There are a lot of possible justifications. What finally snapped? Many believed Pedro was unfaithful before the divorce news broke. Others believe that he had this divorce planned out from the start. Chantel Everett and Pedro Jimeno's marriage and family were so fraught with drama that they were given their own spin-off. So to speak, the Family Chantel walked so that Stacy and Darcy could run. However, Pedro's divorce petition suggested much worse than inter-family fighting or cunning sisters. Pedro charged Chantel with draining their joint business account of funds the same day he filed for divorce. He claimed that she transferred a significant six-figure sum into a joint account with her sister Winter. Pedro requested an urgent hearing from the court but did not make this request in public. Pedro's request for an emergency hearing was denied by the court, but a hearing will still take place later in the summer. But Chantel and Pedro both got restraining orders. Simply put, while the divorce is proceeding, none of them is permitted to engage in financial or marital property mischief. Pedro claims that Chantel took the money out in April, just days before the separation date. It appears that they both realize that things are not going well. Fans have long been aware of it. However, without any public comments from Chantel or Pedro, their supporters are left to make their own judgments. Pedro was a touch too kind of his co-worker on recent episodes of the Family Chantel. According to reports, Antonella and Daniel have been dating for a long time, almost as long as Pedro and Antonella have been wed. But there was a spark that the two of them seemed to have. The fact that they were so close scared even Chantel. This contradicted how Pedro had previously talked about his wife. Chantel has received open criticism from him, especially on her activities in the house and yard. This season, Chantel made a public call out to Pedro while live blogging, but it was before the world found out about their divorce. Of course, Chantel hasn't had cause to be skeptical about Pedro's actions before. For many years, Coraima has been a family friend. At least his sister was interested in seeing them interact. Pedro occasionally appeared to want that as well. The idea that Pedro would have an affair is conceivable. My instinct, though, tells me that if he is infidelity, it's most likely not with a lady who appears on the show. If somebody were to connect the dots, you would want to conceal your side piece from the cameras. The rumor among admirers now is that Pedro never truly loved Chantel. Many viewers believe that Chantel and he are being exploited by his family for fame, money from reality TV, and other purposes. Simple is the current fan theory that Pedro used Chantel to obtain a green card. If you're merely in the relationship as a ruse, 5 years is a long time to stay married. Some people think he kept Chantel as his wife because their fame from reality TV lasted longer than he had intended. Others have noted that he wanted to hold on to his marriage in order to increase the likelihood of moving his mother and sister to the US. We must admit that the 90-Day Fiance fandom has a troubling xenophobia issue at this point. Even though it doesn't happen as frequently as racism or misogyny in the fandom, it nevertheless leads to a lot of false green card claims. Pedro could indeed be a cheater. He might possibly be a con artist. However, it is more likely that the marital conflict was just too much. Well, prior to that divorce issue, there are also some issues that Chantel and Pedro faced. All the signs Chantel and Pedro aren't ready for kids. Although Chantel and Pedro Jimeno have been married for 5 years, there are several indications that they should put off starting a family for the time being. The extended 90-Day Fiance franchise has featured Pedro and Chantel's well-liked romance for many years. But, regrettably, it has gotten worse rather than better. Many of the Family Chantel followers are advising Chantel to reconsider pushing Pedro for a baby even though she's anxious to have one. Chantel and Pedro had a quick chemistry and were able to maintain it despite long-distance relationships and problems with each other's families. Pedro, though, seems to have changed his attitude toward his wife as a result of his devastating findings about this family. During the 3rd season of the show, Pedro discovered that the women in his family had affairs to father their kids. Since then, Pedro, who appeared to be angry, has acted out against his wife. Viewers are shocked by Pedro's abrupt behavior change. He is now more colder and crueler to Chantel than he ever was. In season 4 of the Family Chantel, the subject of babies has been brought up. Chantel, who was 30 at the time of the recording, stated that she wanted to start a family. Pedro, who was 29 at the time, said he intended to wait around 5 years before beginning the baby talk. Chantel was stunned by the information because she does not want to become pregnant again after the age of 35. Pedro and Chantel's radically divergent worldviews demonstrated how incompatible their long-term objectives had grown. Pedro was strongly against the idea of Chantel being pregnant in her early 30s, despite her apparent desire to do so. Because of this, some people believe Chantel and Pedro are no longer a match. Furthermore, because of Chantel and Pedro's serious communication breakdown, observers think they aren't prepared for a child. Chantel acknowledged on camera that she was glad Pedro's family questioned him about babies, since it was the only way she could understand what he was thinking. This mentality is neither typical nor healthy for a married pair. It is obvious that Chantel and Pedro have a recent separation that is causing tension and uncertainty in their relationship. Many viewers think it's obvious that kids should not be brought into this environment. Some people have advised Chantel and Pedro to seek couples therapy before thinking about having a kid. Overall, during the Family Chantel Season 4, Chantel and Pedro seem to be in a bad situation. The question of whether or not they are fabricating their problems divides the audience. During Season 3, Pedro already pretended to be unaware of his half-siblings. He would not be below pretending to be harsh to his wife in exchange for opinions. Others believe that Pedro may be drifting away from Chantel now that he has independence in the United States. The Family Chantel trailer teases new feuds, implants, and more brawling. The Family Chantel is famous for their constant mayhem and altercations. That was accurate even before the spin-off started. A significant inter-family altercation was largely responsible for Chantel Everett and Pedro Jimeno becoming on the map. The 90-Day Fiance alumni and their unruly relatives have returned for Season 3 and are still misbehaving. The new teaser reveals numerous fights, Pedro's search for his father, lots of boob talk, some problems with love, house hunting, and more. Pedro Jimeno and Chantel Everett are looking for a home as the 3rd season trailer opens. It has long been the case that their marriage's main problems aren't just regular interpersonal conflicts. Rather, they are all familial in nature. That is undoubtedly accurate. Chantel is told by Pedro that Lydia, his mother, and Nicole, his sister, may live upstairs and live with them. Chantel agrees rather than laughing uncontrollably at this outrageous notion, with the exception of adding that they would be stored in crates. Pedro is obviously not pleased with Chantel's comparison of his family to uncontrolled animals in need of cages. Nicole, the troublemaking sister of Pedro, flaunts her breast implants. Horaima remarks on a notable increase in her friend's cup size. Naturally, the topic of conversation turns to Chantel's prominent breasts. Chantel's organic, natural breasts, not like her sister-in-law. Pedro starts to bounce them happily on camera, so we don't just have to take her word for it. He obviously takes great satisfaction in his wife's accomplishments. Rivers conversing with Chantel's mother, Karen, on the opposing side of the conversation. Even though River has a new girlfriend and things are getting serious, he maintains that his mother should not be involved. It is, she responds, because all of her adult children's relationships ultimately have an effect on her life. In connection with it, Winter has returned together with Ja, who has discovered a new faith. Ja tries to make Karen feel bad for eating shrimp by accusing her of thinking like a bottom feeder and claiming that he now adheres to a biblical diet. Pedro also encounters Alejandro, the boyfriend of his sister. In addition to being in a long-distance relationship with Nicole, Alejandro is still married, but not to Nicole. Pedro believes that to be false and is interested in learning the man's motivation. Alejandro responds by demeaning Pedro and his mother, which naturally also denigrates Nicole's mother and brother. You are right if you think Pedro is the kind of person who would not take kindly to a yo mama joke. The situation worsens from there to Chantel's ultimate dismay. Alejandro appears to be threatening Pedro physically as we observe him on the street. Pedro doesn't seem to fall into the trap, but he is not required to. Alejandro is the one who ultimately lunges, charges, and leaps at Pedro. Although there is undoubtedly physical contact, it doesn't appear that things escalate as far as they might have. However, this is just a trailer that gives us a preview of what is to come. Switching gears, Pedro tries to learn more about his absent father while he is in Santo Domingo. He tells his mother about his absentee father's evasion. Nicole sobs in the backseat while they converse. Everyone concerned must be sensitive to this subject. Pedro sheds tears as he addresses the confessional camera. He makes it clear, though, that he is not crying because of his father. Instead, he is sobbing at the predicament that his father's actions brought about. Although it is quite thin, he is separating that hair. Nicole is unhappy that Alejandro, her married lover, and Pedro got into a physical argument. She observes that Chantel has verbally insulted several people. But as she points out to Coraima, she has never assaulted Chantel physically. But she's clearly thinking about getting even as she approaches Chantel and her family. She makes a statement in front of her brother, Chantel, and the other Everetts. Nicole states with pride, Pedro made love with Coraima. Nicole appears to return and toss something, but the details of this chain of events are unclear. She was essentially gently tackled and removed from the scenario that followed. It also appears that the police were contacted at Karen's request. Yes, this season promises to be quite the ride. Celebrities are an interesting topic. People know them first because of the people they meet, then because of what they do, and finally the articles and news that surround them. Celebrities have their own unique personal history that they discover as they get older and gain more experience in the entertainment industry. They are also always in the spotlight, so it's hard to keep up with all the latest celebrity gossip. Luckily for you, we are always here for you to stay updated. That's it for this video, Plenty of Pop fan. Remember to subscribe to our channel for all the latest celebrity news and gossip. It's like candy. You can't stop eating. We will cover what celebrities are wearing, who is dating who, and not dating anymore. It's hard to keep up with the recent happenings in their lives. We will satisfy your gossip fix daily, so comment below if there's a celebrity in particular you want us to cover or a juicy news tip you would like to share.